Have you ever dreamt of being able to move things with your mind? It sure would make life a lot easier. Whether it's Jedi mind powers or a mutation that's turned someone into a superhuman, it's certainly an exciting idea. But is it scientifically possible? And are there people who already have this ability? Telekinesis, also referred to as psychokinesis, is the psychic ability that allows a person to influence physical objects without the need to touch them. The term was first used in 1890 by Alexander N. Askakov, who was a Russian psychical researcher. The word itself is a combination of two Greek words, tele and kinesis, which literally translates to distance motion. The idea that telekinesis is possible has intrigued people for hundreds of years, but actually believing in it only came about on a wide scale in the late 1800s due to the popularity of spiritualism. In their performances, psychics would supposedly cross the spiritual plane to make contact with the dead, and in the process, objects would move across the room. This was, of course, no more than a magic trick, but at the time, people were convinced. Even Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who created Sherlock Holmes, was a believer. The acts were soon debunked, and telekinesis faded from belief. But the possibility was revived in the 1940s when a researcher from Duke University began looking at whether people could affect seemingly random occurrences by thought. Since then, numerous researchers have tried to prove it, and famous psychics such as Uri Geller have traveled the world showing their apparent abilities of bending spoons and fixing watches. Today, it's thought that between 15 and 30% of Americans believe that it's possible to change the world around them by thought. While believers will always believe, those in the scientific community have set out to try and prove that telekinesis is possible. But so far, the evidence that has been collected is circumstantial at best, and as with other psychic phenomena, definitive proof has remained elusive. There are, of course, a number of people who falsely claim that they have such powers, and any competent magician can perform tricks to the same effect. This doesn't mean that telekinesis doesn't exist, but it shows that it is easy to fake if someone wanted to do so. Scientifically speaking, there's a big problem with the idea of telekinesis. It breaks some important fundamental laws of physics, like the inverse square law, the second law of thermodynamics, and the conservation of momentum. Simply put, every reaction requires an action to cause it, and from our current understanding of the universe, mind power isn't able to create a force against an object. This hasn't deterred some researchers from continuing with their studies though, and the results are quite interesting. To start, they have split the phenomenon into two distinct categories: micropsychokinesis for the manipulation of small objects, and macropsychokinesis for the manipulation of large objects. The theory is that if humans can influence matter by thought, then the force would be quite small, and therefore be easier to prove if tested on small objects like dice. Therefore, most experiments focus on micropsychokinesis, asking participants to cause a dice to land the same way a number of times in a row, or influence computer-produced random number generators. By repeating these experiments thousands of times, researchers can then perform complex statistical analyses on the results to determine if there's any effect of significance. Despite this rigorous testing, evidence is still scarce, which would suggest that either telekinesis is not naturally possible or that it's incredibly rare, and we just haven't been able to test the right person yet. With all this being said, there's actually a good chance that within the near future, telekinesis will become possible. But rather than coming from the mind, it would likely be a result of technology. A development studio called Neurable announced in 2017 that they were using eye movement tracking and brain scanning technologies in a headset that would allow you to move and manipulate objects in a virtual world simply by looking and thinking about them. This could actually become a reality. It's not too far reach to be wearing a headset and ordering an Uber, cooking your food, or even flying a plane, simply by thinking it. When this becomes a reality, who's to say that this isn't telekinesis? Because it surely would be granting everyone the ability to influence physical objects simply by thinking. Telekinesis is a widely believed phenomenon, and also the superpower that a lot of people would choose if given the option. Laboratory studies have yet to find a way to prove that it is a real thing, but that in itself isn't enough to prove that it will never exist, because soon enough we'll have technology that creates the same effect, and you'll be pretty close to having Jedi powers of your own. Thanks for watching! Let us know what you think in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this video, let us know by giving us a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss our newest episodes. See you next time!